Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum. I'm Scott Wright, the CEO of ClickArmor, and ClickArmor sponsors these sessions. Today we're going to be talking about bridging the gap between compliance-based training and risk-based training for cybersecurity. And we've got an excellent panel here today, some new faces, some older faces, not old, but people who've been here before. We're all young, right? Um, Anyway, great to have you and everyone in the audience. We're happy to have anybody contributing, participating in the chat. Love to hear where people are coming from around the world. I'll do a really quick roundtable in a moment. But just as a bit of background information, if you haven't been in the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum sessions before, ClickArmor sponsors this as a way of participating in the industry just to generate some engagement for anyone interested in security awareness, human risk management, and it could be anywhere from IT managers, security operations center managers, managed service providers, CISOs. So we get all kinds of people in here and have a great spectrum of people on our panel today. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a moment, and we will get started. So I'm going to start. I guess I'll go with Elizabeth first, and then Jamil. So Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Nowak, and I represent sort of the uh, mom work-oriented person, a student in cybersecurity. I'm working on my bachelor's right now, but I was a teaching assistant with cybersecurity boot camps, and one of the fellow TAs ends up working with ClickArmor. So I got interested, and involved, and been watching and participating. It's been really good. But I don't have an industry background. I have the other side of things background.
That's awesome. Glad to have you here. Thanks. And you've joined us before, so welcome you back. Jamil.
Hello, I'm Cemile Küçük. I'm a data protection and AI governance professional, a lawyer and a techie, and I live in Istanbul, Turkey. I am also a mother of two beautiful girls, and I'm so happy to be here again.
Thanks, and we're happy to have you. Then next will be Theo, then Mitchell, and Dustin.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name is Theo Zafirakos. I currently work as a fractional or virtual CISO, whatever you want to call it, helping organizations mature the cybersecurity posture, improve governance, and align their program with the internal and external requirements using recognized frameworks. Over the last years, I focused a lot on cybersecurity awareness programs, both for security and compliance purposes. I've helped over the 300 to 500 organizations over the last years across the globe implement programs. I began my career as a CISO in the private sector, where I built and launched and managed programs from scratch. I'm hoping in the future to contribute by leveraging what I've learned to help others, empower cybersecurity through panels like this, so we could generate this trust and sharing in the ever evolving and complex cyber threat landscape.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Theo. Mitchell.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks, Scott, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mitch Kowalski. I've spent the last 20 plus years in security governance. I'm currently in between gigs, but do have a passion for security policy, risk remediation. But ultimately, it all boils down to security awareness. Connected with Scott and to get involved in what ClickArmor was doing and just security awareness in general. And thank you for including me in this panel.
You're welcome, and thanks for joining us. And finally, Dustin, who's new to the panel, but he's been with us before in the chat. So great to have you, Dustin.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite to be part of the panel. I was a software engineer for over a decade, so I spent a lot of time sort of heads down, focused on technical problems, and then I got into cyber through that space, right? So I've actually helped roll out AppSec programs at multiple companies, very quickly learned the importance of people and influencing people and the importance of security awareness and all of that. I have also rolled out security awareness programs at this point, and I do a lot of fractional and vCISO work, just like Theo, as well. So I'm also very, very fascinated, I would say, by the behavioral science side, right, of people. So I think what's very interesting is my career, where I went from a very technical minded person, right, into someone that really cares about the people side. So I'm looking forward to this. I do a lot in terms of gamification, security champions, these kinds of concepts to help influence behavior. So happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, that's awesome. In fact, I think Dustin and I are kind of kindred spirits in a way. We've probably known each other 3 or 4 years, maybe longer than the rest of the panel. But we've also, I did a lot of work in the past on the psychological side of security awareness as well. I had a project called the Honey Stick Project, where I would drop USB drives everywhere and see what people did with them, which was always fun, and did presentations on that too. So, but also ClickArmor being a gamified platform. Dustin and I have chatted a little bit about that too. So lots of good common themes here. So appreciate everyone being on the call. And also just a little bit of procedural information. We're going to be discussing, first of all, a little bit of context that I put together usually for each of these sessions. And it's by no means meant to be complete, but it's a starting point for us to talk. And I will have 3 open questions for the panel, and interspersed between those, we will have some poll questions for the audience. And we hope you'll participate and provide some input. Then at the end, we'll review the poll results. And so that'll probably take close to an hour, and it's going to be a fun time. So I will share my screen in a moment, but first I would just want to do a quick run through our roundtable. So we've got Shelley from Ohio, we've got Elizabeth from North Carolina, uh, Dustin from Colorado, cool, and Mitch from Columbia, Maryland, Michelle from Regina, Saskatchewan, Christian from Montreal, Eric from Regina, Kevin from Italy, Theo from Montreal, and Frederick from Victoria. Welcome, Frederick. Good to see you again. Jason as well. And he's from Atlanta. So thanks very much, everybody. If I didn't get to your place of origin, don't be too offended. We're doing our best. So we'll get started now. And just going to share a little bit about, the thoughts that I have around compliance-based security training versus risk-based. So when you look at the attributes of a compliance-based program, everybody sort of thinks they're somewhere probably in the middle, or that they maybe have a fully risk-based approach. Sometimes maybe people don't pay as much attention to it. It's something to be done, and it's, a lot of times security awareness and security training are just part of one person's job or as a manager of a number of different roles. And maybe it's all they can do to just meet the compliance requirements. But we're going to look at how those things differ and why you might want to aim for being in a risk-based program and extend your program that way. So when we look at compliance, its primary focus is on meeting regulatory and policy requirements, and the instructional style is often pretty simple, checklist driven, standardized. You want it to be efficient, easy to deploy, and the content experience is generally passive. You get through it once and you're done. It's not all that engaging. It's sometimes intimidating depending on the language that's used. If you don't put a lot of effort into making it tailored for people to understand, clearly it's going to sometimes be too high or too low technical levels or other attributes of it that people don't engage with. Then measuring their effectiveness, you're usually just measuring pass or fail, or sometimes just completion. And you might also be doing some phishing simulations, as we all know about. And how you do phishing simulations can vary as well from a compliance perspective to a risk-based perspective. Engagement is usually fairly low unless you're using the stick to make it mandatory, and you're giving people a little bit of a threat to complete it or else. And the long-term benefit really is just to meet legal and audit compliance requirements. I may be oversimplifying these things, and you can, if you're a big advocate of compliance-based training, feel free to dispute the things I'm saying. But I also want to contrast that with risk-based training, and where I would say, the focus is addressing specific organizational risks and scenarios. So you understand your organization's risks. So you want your people to understand those risks and be able to help reduce the risks. The instructional style is often customized, targeted for relevant threats and roles, as well as for remediation. And then the content experience itself would be more dynamic, interactive, inclusive, so that people are really engaged with the content and can actually practice making risk decisions. The measurements are often more based on scenario type situations where you can assess people's decisions and reduce the security incidents. And the only way to do that is sometimes with a little bit more infrastructure in your program, but that is a goal that you'd like to achieve. Obviously, you want to know whether or not the training is being effective by reducing incidents. And then the long-term benefit is build cyber resilience and have a proactive security culture. So those are the things that I sort of put down, and I'll get the panel's input on those and my questions as well as we go forward. So I'm going to launch our first poll, which is, what best describes your organization's approach to security awareness training? Is it compliance focused with checklists and quick things that people get to do? Or is it risk focused with more tailored, engaging content? Or is it a balanced mix? If you feel it's balanced, that's fair. And if you're not sure, happy to hear that as well. So I'll let people go with that, but I'm going to raise the first question for the panel, and we'll let everybody go through in order that I introduced you. So Elizabeth, then Shamila, then Theo, then Mitchell, then Dustin. So if you actually have follow-up comments to something people are saying in the panel, I'll ask panelists to raise their hand if they can in Zoom. And if you have a question or comment in the audience, just type it in the chat. And I hope the panelists will help me moderate. It's hard for me to do some of these things, sharing screens and doing polls and all that stuff. So if panelists see something that should be responded to, then feel free to jump in and say who posted the question and what your opinion is on it. So I'm going to start now with the panel and just say, when is compliance-based training most often used versus risk-based training? So I'm going to keep it open if you want to put your hand up if you have a really strong opinion. Sometimes people don't have a strong opinion on these, but I'll ask Elizabeth, if you've been in an organization where you've had compliance or risk-based training, what have you seen?
I actually was teaching cybersecurity, and there was really no training from the organization with which I was working. But what we understood was more compliance-based. I looked at more compliance-based simply because they didn't really understand the risk of the company. So it was whatever they needed to do to comply with the actual, governmental thing
Yep.
that applied to them. That's what they would do. And so that's what I would say. If your company really isn't aware of the risks, if they've just simply got a legal department that's saying, hey, we need to tick these boxes, you're more likely to have a compliance-based training program than one that has a really good security team that's worked on the risks and is aware of what you actually are dealing with.
That's great, and I totally agree. And sometimes it's just a matter of maturity, right? So, as you progress from no maturity, you're going to start with compliance, right? So, Shamila, any thoughts?
Yeah, of course. So what I've seen is compliance-based training dominates when the companies act from obligation, not from intent. So it's really about showing you have done something, not proving it really worked or not, but showing that you have done something. It's auditable and it is repeatable when necessary, this kind of trainings. So it's like the base of the compliance. Yeah, you have some trainings in place, you checked some boxes, your employees, you can prove that your employees have completed those trainings. But if it's raising the awareness, it's actually arguable. So risk-based approach is more mature, as you mentioned. The compliance-based training is more seen, I think, on the heavily regulated sectors or the companies that just starting out. So in the more mature companies, trainings are risk-based. It's because it's about changing the behavior, mapping the risk of the company, knowing the company, determining the pain points of the company, then creating those trainings.
Right. Okay. That sounds good. Theo, any thoughts?
Yes, and I wanted to add also when we talk about compliance-based training, the training that is related to either regulations or security standards, for example, GDPR or PCI. And a lot of times organizations are going to deploy compliance-based training because they have to, right? They have to satisfy PCI standards. So they inform their staff on the PCI requirements. And then they say, well, we completed the PCI training, and it tends to be the same course over and over year after year, right? But that is not sufficient. And the two are not mutually exclusive, right? You have to know when you need compliance-based training and when do you need risk-based training. We talk about risk-based training. Well, it's not easy to deploy either, right? You have to have a good understanding of what your internal risks are, right? And if you have a big and diverse audience, do you standardize or do you do role-based training? So there's challenges on the risk-based training as well. And then we have compliance or risk-based metrics, right? Did I deploy everything I said I was gonna deploy? Did everybody complete the training, right? Those are compliance-based metrics, right? Risk-based metrics are, did I reduce the number of incidents? Did I reduce the number of events affecting me? And so on. So you have to think in both aspects, and when do you need one or the other, and how much in depth you need to go for each level of training.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Mitchell.
The other, I heard earlier when it was said about using compliance-based training, usually from a startup, right, a new company or something like that, and you're just getting started with your security program. But also, sometimes it's with these extremely large companies, right? And when you're dealing with, tens of thousands of employees, or even greater, and if you went to a risk-based training, it becomes so specialized that there's a lot of work there, right? And the
Yeah.
security team usually is not grown to handle that capacity, right? So you have to come up with something that might be more compliance based. You may have individualized training that is then developed on a risk base, but doesn't cover all 10,000 plus employees, right? It's just isolated to particular business units or particular sectors. So that's, from a compliance standpoint, you know, it's there from a regulation perspective. So you have some sort of plausible accountability, right? That says, hey, we trained everybody if an incident happens. But I think everybody sees that and understands it just becomes a check mark. And for the people who are taking it, how can I get through this as quickly as possible so that I can go on with the rest of my work?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I hadn't really even thought about it that way, Mitch. So I really appreciate you bringing it up. The fact that large organizations can actually struggle with doing it when they're the ones that probably should have the budget and scope to be able to do it properly, right? So it's an interesting way that the industry has unfolded. Dustin.
Yeah, I kind of want to add to the startup perspective because I actually co-founded a startup and it's actually a security focused company. But we're starting with more compliance-based security practices in general, right? Creating policies, sort of standing up essentially the framework that is going to grow with us over time, of course. But I think that's the right approach. And the reason is because you want your approach to match the risk of the business as well. So what I mean by that is, as a smaller company, you're really focused on finding product market fit and hitting your revenue targets and all this stuff. There's a lot of other concerns to consider here. But as your business grows, the risk of a security incident happening, et cetera, becomes larger, right? So now you need to start thinking about methods that actually work, right? Which is more of a risk-based focus. Because I think we can all agree, right? That's more beneficial, right, to have more of a risk-based focus. But that compliance piece does play a part. The other thing I want to mention is I've been brought into companies that wouldn't even have a security team at that stage without compliance, right? Without them trying to pursue PCI or some other cert that forces them essentially to make hires to focus on creating policies and so forth. So again, it's another good way to get your foot in the door and really get things started. And then hopefully over time you mature to something that's more risk-based.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes it's hard for others to understand the challenges of a startup trying to work or develop a product in a secure way. Because if you're attracting investment, trying to grow the business, it's really hard to build a product and try and invest in all that stuff when you're not even sure if it's going to be successful. So putting in security that's kind of invisible at the beginning doesn't really provide the demonstration of product market fit, like you said. So that is really challenging, and I know that feeling. So thanks for that. Next, I'm going to go to another poll question. Let me just move things along here. There we go. So poll number 2 is, have repetitive phishing tests in your organization led to any of the following? Improved vigilance, employee frustration, fewer employee attributable incidents, increasing rates of spotting the test, is what I call it. When people, you see a decline in clicks, but it may not be because they're actually any better at spotting this stuff. Or other things that you've seen from having phishing tests implemented. So this should be a fun discussion. I will let that run for a while, and let's see here. Yeah, in what ways are phishing and compliance metrics potentially being overused or misinterpreted, and why does it happen? Or if you have a more positive spin on phishing simulations, feel free to discuss it in the context of compliance and risk. So I will start again with Elizabeth.
Okay. When we were learning about, using phishing simulations and various things as far as security awareness, the simplicity of it was because people didn't really know anything about security. And the first thing is, that the main way that people are attacked is by phishing simulations. Therefore, let's do phishing simulations and teach them these things. But it really isn't so much a matter of, what happens when you click on the link, how is this affecting the company? How is this affecting yourself? If you do it on a business email, is that different than if you do it on your personal email? There wasn't a whole lot of what happens when you do it. It was just, oh, well, let's teach you how to look for phishing emails. And then how many people are actually going to spend the time looking at every single email? Is this the proper return email address? Is this, there's not a lot of actual understanding about it. So I feel like the overuse is just simply to hit your compliance metrics, whether or not you click on it. Just a part of a program that you need to have. Whether it's effective or not isn't as important as whether you have one. And that's where I see it being overused. It's a very useful thing if they understand and know what's going on, and it's effectively being incorporated into how people do their work. Otherwise, it's just simply an overuse of something just simply because, oh, this is the most important or the most used, and so therefore we throw it out there.
Yeah, great points. And yeah, we do see it a lot where teams don't really think through what's their objective in doing phishing simulations. So I'll let some of the other panelists come up with their thoughts on it. Shamila?
Yeah, actually, phishing simulations are great tools. They were always been, but until they started to feel like traps, employees start to feel like they are tricked or embarrassed. So that kind of breaking the trust, and when trust breaks, at that point, learning stops, unfortunately, and. Yes, they are overused because we love numbers, we love metrics. Easy to collect the click rates, easy to collect
yeah.
population stats, and actually very easy to present it to leadership. They want to see some clear numbers, but I am not sure if they indicate the awareness in the reality of the company, because as you know, a lower click rate might mean employees don't read their emails. So we can't
Exactly.
trust that. Yeah, but we should be looking into maybe how comfortable are employees to escalate the incidents, how comfortable they feel to report any suspicious activity. Those are the real metrics for me, but of course they are not easy to quantify as the phishing attack results. But yes,
Yeah.
it's kind of overused, and the awareness raised, but I think the teams shouldn't be relying on these simulations directly when they need to show something to the leadership board.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so common, that you see organizations seeing their click rates go down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the actual incidents are going down because of it. There could be an incidence of what I call spotting the test, right? Where people they can recognize by the subject line that it's not a normal email and they're just going to ignore it. So that doesn't tell you anything really about their ability to analyze dangerous links or senders. So it's a really good discussion. I will turn it over to Theo.
Yeah, and I agree. Phishing simulations are great for raising awareness because we're not exposed to phishing attacks all the time, and we may forget that threat is out there. It shouldn't be used to test user readiness. It's more of an opportunity for them to be exposed to new tactics. Oh, look, there's a QR code type of phishing, or there's a phishing that is looking to collect your two-factor authentication, and so on. So giving that exposure could help users identify a real threat when it comes in, because now they know what a phishing attack may look like. The metrics are also very useful, but for updating and designing your program, not necessarily just reporting low click rates, oh, therefore I'm secure. And that's maybe a false sense of security that we may get from this data. Looking at your click rates, such as who clicked on a link or who submitted data on a form, could help you focus your training on whether it needs to be at the email detection level or at the website detection level, right? There's different tactics to detect phishing, whether it's on email or on a website. So it helps you tailor your program to where you need. And metrics such as reporting are very important. You want to see, that's a positive metric. You want to see that metric go up over time because reporting doesn't only protect the individual, but also reports the whole organization. Right? Yeah, too much phishing could cause the users to detect the test or feel tricked or overly worked. I worked with an organization that wanted to send out phishing every 2 weeks. And then after a year, it became very overwhelming, not just for the users, but also for the team who had to collect and report on that data. And we talked about misleading the data, right? Your click rate is your click rate for that scenario, right? It's not your overall click rate. And those metrics also could be misused when organizations want to compare to colleagues or other organizations or peers and say, well, how is my industry doing? How do we compare to them? Right? And it's not a fair comparison because you don't know if they have the same culture, the same training exercising, the same activities, and so on. So be careful when you're using the metrics to benchmark with others.
I love those comments, Theo. Totally agree. The variability of the data based on test to test, it's impossible to create the exact same conditions from one test to the next. So how do you know how much more difficult it is or less, right? So it's a really good comment. Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a background in mathematics, and metrics to me, again, as everybody's been saying, very misleading. So they're great. You can make a number mean whatever you want that number to mean. And if you're trying to get more money, right? If you're trying to get more financing for for your department, you want to skew the numbers one way, right? And if you want to show that you're having success, you make the numbers show another way. So, you know, metrics to me, you use them how you want to, and you devise them the way you want. When it comes to phishing, however, one anecdote that I have is we would send out our phishing simulations every couple of months, and the teams would, some of them would identify them and they would put them in the Slack channel, right? And they'd let everybody know, hey, they're doing their phishing simulation, look for this. And my manager had a big problem with that. That's what it had devolved to. And I said, that's good. I liked that they were doing that because it would be, and we were all virtual. It would be as if you were in the office and people are talking back and forth. So I don't have a problem with that. And then fast forward about 6 months later, we ended up having an actual phishing attack, one that was not a simulation, but one that people started, hey, they're doing it again. They're sending it out to simulation, and we're looking at each other going, no, we didn't. We didn't send out the simulation. So it actually worked to our benefit that we were seeing their actions. And again, metrics aren't going to show you that, right? But seeing how they were communicating, seeing that basically, the community was working together to identify a phishing simulation was the result that we were looking for. And that was more important than any phishing metric that we could have put together.
I totally agree. I've had that actually happen in one client where we were doing phishing simulations and they wanted to do one that included some kind of payroll discrepancy or whatever, right? And it freaked a bunch of people out and they called the payroll department. And in retrospect, while it was a very painful time for them, in retrospect, it was very valuable to almost like a tabletop exercise to say, okay, let's analyze this situation and figure out what the communication really should have been, right?
And if you ever want to get somebody for a phishing simulation, send out a free meal anytime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, something free, it will be clicked on. And again, that's showing the metric. Like we saw metrics, we saw higher click rates, we saw higher people getting caught for that particular. We could have sent the same simulation out in April and not gotten the same thing. So again, it doesn't matter on there's so many factors, as Theo was pointing out, that go into determining whether a particular metric is of value or not.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Okay, Dustin, your thoughts?
Yeah, that is true. People like free stuff. I think it's a really good point, and the approach that I've typically recommended is to be scientific about that. Really try to adjust for difficulty, and sort of normalize for that. Have controls and variables essentially, where you can test things like time of quarter, time of year, time of day, right? When you send the fish right after lunch versus before and so forth, because it gives you a really clear picture in terms of what people are susceptible to. And then you can turn around and produce training or awareness around that, right? Hey, did you know people who are hungry, right, are more likely to click on a phishing email? We see that in our company. Here's some data, right? And I think that that's very impactful for folks as well. In terms of its overuse, I think really what's overused is the punishment of phishing versus the reporting, right? So the carrot versus the stick. I find it a lot more effective to set up some sort of gamified, contest or something that's going to reinforce reporting a phishing email versus the other side of it. So that's something to think about. Again, I think people just lean a little too much into the compliance checkbox when it comes to that. I think there's a habit that's generally accepted across organizations, right? You send a phishing test, people fail, you send them training. And they don't really go beyond that and think about other ways that are actually going to be effective. I also shared the NIST fish scale in the chat. Yeah, so feel free to check that out. I've also gotten a lot of use out of that too. And then one last point is, I did a bunch of research to write a paper, and what phishing actually brings in terms of a benefit is it aligns with the experiential learning model, right? Which is learning by and through experience. So in terms of, hey, there might be a training that's just sort of a generic thing versus, can I actually put what I'm learning into practice? And that's where I find phishing to be really useful. Not to mention it's easy to measure, right? It's sort of an easy indicator of where people are in terms of their maturity thinking about cybersecurity.
Yeah, excellent points, Dustin. And Theo has a comment.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to what Dustin said is that you have to determine what is important for your organization, in terms of consequences in risk in phishing simulations. I worked with an organization who was an IT and cybersecurity service provider where their employees had admin access into their client system. So obviously, a phishing attack that materialized would have devastating consequences for the organization and their clients. In their case, in the phishing simulation, participant failed if they didn't report the phish. So you actually had to report in order to consider a success because they take cybersecurity that seriously. So there's no one recommendation that applies to everyone. You have to determine what's right for you.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the essence of the risk-based approach, is trying to make sure that you address the organization's risk, because every organization has different risks, terminology, policies, workflows, you name it, right? So it makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So we're going to go to our last poll question, which is, which topics would you like to see most enhanced in future training with respect to risk-based training? So real-world risks, better reflection of compliance and regulatory requirements, more social engineering tactics, more phishing tactics, coverage of hybrid, phone, SMS, email, and incident response. So, or if you have other things too, you can put them in the chat. So I'm going to let that run for a little while as we go to our last question right after my quick promotion for ClickArmor. Just wanted to point out, ClickArmor does sponsor the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum, and we do have a unique method of training employees using a very engaging environment. It's more than just click-through training. We actually use a gaming engine that has a lot of interactivity and the ability to track a lot more decisions that employees are making through a course. And so we have really interesting and engaging puzzles, exercises, social scenarios, and phishing simulations, which are virtual. So you actually have an inbox that you can sort your messages, and we can focus in on the real risk issues around whether people are able to spot links or domains, which is very different than the data that you get from live phishing simulations. So in many organizations, we complement the traditional by providing better foundational training, and then you can do the risk-based or do the phishing simulations to actually do more of a risk-based decision in the real world, right? As Dustin said, the experiential kind of situations. So if you're interested in learning more about ClickArmor, please contact us, and we'd love to just show you how quickly it can be implemented. Theo, did you have a comment, or was that accidental? All right. So we'll go to our last open question, which is, how can organizations design a cybersecurity training program that's appropriate to their risks? So this gets down to the guts of it all, right? And so we're going to open it up again to the panel, and I will start with Elizabeth.
Okay. This begins with the risk register that a company should start with, organizing what do we have available, what are our assets, our people, our machinery, our company things, and then what are the risks that are common to those things, whether it's social engineering on the people, or maybe it's everybody has a Windows machine that is Windows 10 and we're about to lose all the support for all of that. So we need to start working on what are those things about. So appropriate to your risk. This depends on your company. So if you're going to design a cybersecurity training program, you need to kind of know, what are our people looking at as far as risk? Is this physical entry into the building? Is it people calling salespeople trying to sell things, but then they end up getting all kind of other information and breaking into systems that way? What are our risks? And so you'd have to start with knowing what your risks are as a company in order to design your cybersecurity awareness training based on those.
Really good points. Thanks, Elizabeth. Chimela?
I agree, actually. First, know your reality, know your company's reality, then tailor the content to your reality. Of course, to do this, you should involve different departments, diverse departments like HR, finance, operations, because they often know where the real weaknesses lay. Then you should be focusing on your real risks. For example, a hospital should train its employees on protecting maybe patient data, and the factory that is manufacturing might be more focused on the operational tech security. So it will depend on your domain heavily. And I believe that just 40-minute slide decks annually won't work for raising the awareness. So yes, finding more unique and more creative ways like gamification would be a great help to raise the awareness. Yeah, I guess just tailoring is the most important.
Excellent. Next would be Theo.
Well, to effectively do this, it does require you to have some kind of level of maturity within your organization. So you have to understand what your business functions are. What are your crown jewels, their sensitivity, data, processes, systems, services, and what threat landscape is affecting you, right? So that a startup may not have that from the beginning, right? So if you're a startup, start with the basics. What are the 80% of cyber threats or best practices that you need to inform your employees versus if you are a financial services company where you may be affected by a lot of these. And you want to show relevance to the employees' day-to-day work. Can you customize your content based on the role and the risk of the employee and their daily work? Again, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but leveraging examples that are relevant. For example, if you're doing providing a phishing example, well, a targeted phishing attack to an HR employee may be different to a system administrator, someone who works in finance on the service desk. So can I use examples that are specific to the day-to-day work? And that will help you strengthen your user behaviors because now they understand why they need to do it. I think that's one of the most effective ways to improvise your program, but it takes time. It may require you to create customized content and material, support multiple training streams, and those are often challenges organizations face when they're trying to optimize their program.
Excellent. I see Elizabeth posted a note reflecting Fleetus is one of our other panelists who's often here, and he has a comment, but I'll come back to that in a minute after we get Mitchell and Dustin's input. So Mitchell.
No, I would agree with Elizabeth's comment around the risk registry, right? Being able to align the risks and your training program to address what may be top of your risk registry. Again, that takes planning. Just like, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, where most training, compliance-based training don't figure on September 28th, to have this sort of risk-based training put in place for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, right, and have it instantly put in place. The other thing that I'll add is, and based on what you had put down for your questions, I think there needs to be heightened social training. We do that with phishing, right, and the social interactions. It goes back to, like you said, the example you gave around dropping the USBs, right? But how are these social interactions? Most vulnerabilities, most threats are exploited in some capacity through people, right? Something, some way a person is involved in that. So I think there needs to be a heightened awareness with relation to the social aspects of it, right? Whether it's, making sure that somebody doesn't, go through the door with you, right? It's nice to hold a door open for somebody holding packages, but at the same time, are they supposed to be there, right? The physical um, things like that. So I think that needs to be incorporated. And then you just need the flexibility, right? As new risks arrive, as new things come up, right, and hits, you need to be able to adjust your security training to address some of those new aspects.
Excellent. Good points, Mitchell. Thanks. Dustin.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that and maybe make this sticky, you really can't just drop a program that you've implemented elsewhere into a new environment. Okay. I think the maturity of your approach is represented by your ability to be flexible and adjust and really listen and observe the current culture, right? And essentially tailor the program overall to the unique needs of the business. I see this as a fallacy that a lot of experienced people do, right? They have seen things that have worked. They try to bring that exact same thing into their next role, and it falls apart, right, for various reasons. So I would definitely encourage everyone as you mature in your career and so forth, especially as you enter leadership, to really lean into and focus on your ability to learn about new situations and stay flexible.
Great thoughts. Thanks, everybody, for all those opinions. I'm going to actually now share our results from the polls. So normally I was copying and pasting this stuff into the presentation, and then half the things get chopped off, so I wasn't able to, to interpret them. So let's see if this works better. So for poll number 1, which describes your organization's approach to security awareness training? Most people say a balance, and then fewer say compliance, and then unfortunately fewer still say risk-based. So it's not a huge surprise, I think, because we talked about the challenges and the costs involved in doing a fully risk-focused approach. But I think it does seem like something from all of our comments that it's worth planning for or aiming for. So I'm going to just go through the rest of these and see if the panel have any comments on any of these results in the end. So have repetitive phishing tests led to any of these particular things? So improved vigilance. So yeah, as soon as you teach people that they can be targeted and maybe fall for this stuff, they start to become more vigilant. So there's a huge value from an awareness point of view there. Increasing rates of spotting the test was actually number 2, which is really interesting. So it sort of validates our concern about overuse or misuse of phishing simulations. Fewer employee attributable incidents and fewer employee frustration or disengagement. So I might be a little surprised that I would have thought you might see this as a little higher issue, but those are the main ones that we saw from that question. And then thirdly, which topics would you most like to see enhanced in future training? Number 1 is more social engineering tactics. I think Mitchell brought that up towards the end. More coverage of hybrid threats like phone, SMS, email threats. And then more phishing tactics, more incident response, and real world risk scenarios. Sorry, that was number 2. So that sort of falls into many of these as well. So I think everybody would like to see more real world scenarios. So with that, any comments just from the panel? You can just raise your hand if you want to make a comment. Mitchell?
Yeah, I think when your first poll, actually, the result of a hybrid with compliance and risk based, actually, that's I think that's the best of both worlds, and I think that's actually good. Again, if it's risk focused, you may not hit everybody, right? And you may be focusing in a particular risk that may hit engineers versus financial folks, depending on what you're doing. But if you have both and you have a compliance base, then you're at least getting a splattering of it across the base. So I think actually the combination of both probably is ideal in this situation. Would be something to
Yeah,
of an achievement for everybody.
excellent. Any other comments from the panel or in the chat on any of the poll results? All right, I'm going to just move on to our sort of final section here where I just captured these things as I said I would, but just to wrap up, just like people to sort of reflect on all the things that we've discussed here today, lots of great different perspectives about the value and challenges of going to a risk-based approach or a balanced approach, as we probably should have spent a little more time talking about, but thanks for raising that, Mitch. So think about what you might do differently as a result of this session. Would you reach out to somebody for help? Would you try something different? Or just look at data in a new way, maybe. So we're going to go just to our final slide, which is to let people know that if you'd like to stay engaged with these sessions and with the people who are sort of frequently involved here, we do have a membership site that's free to join. It's called the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum. And I post all of the notices of upcoming sessions as well as the recordings from each session in that community. So it's pretty easy to find them there. So I do invite people to join, and could always use help just in organizing these sessions. It's challenging, obviously, as I said, to switch between all the context during the sessions, but also there are a lot more things I think we could be doing collaboratively in the community. So would welcome your input on those. But I don't have a planned session. I think we will do one in November, but I had not yet come up with a session title. But as long as we're connected on LinkedIn, if you follow us or follow the community, then it'll be announced fairly shortly. And I do thank all the panelists for joining us today, as well as everybody in the audience for all your comments. And until next time, I just want to say engaged employees reduce risks. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.